Okay, I think we could start, and then if more people join, I think that's okay. Hi, my name is Penny, and I'm Ralston PTA president, and I'm welcoming Edith Cabuslay. She is, oh, you don't have the slide up. She works for the San Mateo County Health and Education. Um, and she is happily here to teach us a little bit about how to get the communication going and help us with connection with our children. Edith, do you want to go ahead and take it? And oh, the questions and answers box is open at the bottom of your Zoom if you'd like to ask a question, and we'll answer it throughout. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Good evening, everyone. I am Edith Cabuslay. I work for the San Mateo County Health Department within the Behavioral Health and Recovery Services Division of the department. I have a master's in public health, which means that I am trained to educate people about health-related issues. So I'm happy to be here with you this evening. I am a parent of 3 boys. My oldest is in the last year of his postdoc training on Oahu. My second is a chemist working in the biotech industry, and my third one, happily, is going to graduate from college next weekend. And he's a finance major. So our family is very math and science oriented. Until the child who became all about money. So that's who I am. Thank you for having me come this evening. We wanted to talk about how parents can help their children prepare. Initially, we wanted to talk about helping their children prepare for adolescent years. And then we wanted to bring this to the middle school and to the elementary school. And we actually wanted to talk to parents of younger and younger children because there's so much that we can do to prepare ourselves and our children for developing the healthiest possible young people that we can. In fact, preparing yourself and your child to be as healthy and as resilient as possible actually needs to start before they're born. A person's body that's going to be carrying that child needs to be as healthy as possible so that that pregnancy is as healthy as possible and will maximize the birth and the health of the infant. So it is never too young to learn about how we can raise healthy children. And at some point, it might be too old if our kids have moved out of the house or our relationship with them is such that it would take too long to recover. And this is why we want to talk to parents of younger and younger children. So I'm glad that you are here this evening. I am not able to see the Q&A while I am sharing my screen, but if you could please put in the Q&A and Penny will track it for me, what grade your child or your children are in. It would help me understand who is in the audience. So I'd appreciate that information. And if the computer will let me advance, it would be really lovely. And goodness, it's not letting me advance. We will fix this. I will do that by perhaps stopping sharing for a minute. There we go. And then I will share again.
We have a sixth grader, fourth grade, eighth and 10th, and a sixth grader.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Collection of like elementary, middle, and high school. Thank you all for coming. We're going to cross our fingers that when I hit the presentation mode, this works. And Penny can be the witness that it worked last time, so it should work again this time. There it is. It worked, right?
Yes.
Awesome sauce. Okay, so here's what I'm going to cover this evening. I'm going to introduce you to the County Health Department in case you didn't know that you had one. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the work that we do in behavioral health and recovery services. I'm going to share with you some data related to youth mental health and drug use in San Mateo County. In fact, I'm going to share with you data specific to your school district, whether that is Belmont-Redwood Shores or it is Sequoia Union. And then I'm going to talk about what young people need for a healthy development and what you can do as adults in their lives to prepare yourself and them to be as healthy as possible. You are welcome to post your questions in the Q&A all along, and Penny will interrupt me and ask your question, or you can wait till the end. It's really up to you. All right, San Mateo County Health Department. This is us, and you see on the screen our mission statement as an organization. We strive to protect and promote the health of everyone in San Mateo County by working to prevent diseases before they occur. We also treat mental and physical conditions, and we monitor the environment and the health of the community overall. And you see on the screen the different divisions within the health department that serve the community. The Aging and Adult Services Division works with older adults and adults over 18 who are disabled. Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, you'll hear more about in a little bit. Correctional Health Services are the ones that we provide to people who are in our jails. The Emergency Medical Services are the people who oversee the ambulance services in San Mateo County. Environmental health services are the folks who inspect your restaurants and your pools and apartment buildings. They're the ones who, if there's a spill on the road that might be hazardous, they're the ones who go and clean that up. Family health services work with primarily families with children under 5. However, they also have services that go until a young person is 18 years old. Public health policy and planning is the division that tracks the data throughout the whole county and gives advice on how we can improve overall health in the county. And San Mateo Medical Center is the modern term for the general hospital. This is the hospital that, for many of you will know, is in San Mateo on 39th Avenue. That medical center has satellite clinics in different areas of the county: Daly City, the Coast Side, South San Francisco, East Palo Alto, Redwood City. But the one that's closest to you in Belmont-Redwood Shores would be the medical center on 39th Avenue in San Mateo. Here is Behavioral Health and Recovery Services budget for next year, fiscal year 2026-2027. You can see that more than 50%, more than half of our budget goes towards adult/older adult. Those are mental health services to adults in San Mateo County. The bottom left in purple is youth mental health services, clinical also. What you see in kind of the orangish salmon color are admin costs. And in green is where my unit lives. That is the substance use disorder unit. That is prevention, treatment, and recovery services for people who use substances. So as you can see, only a little bit more than 10% of behavioral health's budget goes towards substance use disorder. My specific unit, which is the prevention of alcohol, tobacco, and other drug services, is about 3% of that 13.65%. So our prevention services in San Mateo County within BHRS is pretty limited. So we are a small and mighty group of people. So I wanted to connect this conversation with what you as parents expect of your students. What you see here is in many ways how our education system is built. It's a little bit of a taxonomy. It builds from the bottom up. So what you see on the bottom, when children are very young and they're just starting out to learn about everything in life, we teach them so that they will remember what we teach them. So we expect them to remember things. This is where memorization comes in. We want them to learn their letters. The next time they see that same shape, we want them to recognize and be able to tell us what that letter is. The same thing with numbers. Just kind of the most basic memorization and repeat what they know is what we expect them to start out with. And as they get good with that skill, we want them to start to understand what they're looking at, that the letters make sounds and that those letters can form words. So we wanted them to do more with what they've just memorized. We want them to understand what it is that they're looking at. And once they understand a little bit better, we want them to apply that information to new situations. So if you know how to add 4 plus 4, we're going to challenge you to know how to add 4 plus 5, even though you haven't seen that specific equation before. So trying to see if what they learned earlier in their education, they can apply to new situations. That would be what we'd want them to do. And then as they get more sophisticated, we want them to analyze what it is that they're taking a look at. If this is in social studies or language arts, we might have them analyze the sentence structure, or we might want them to take a look at news stories and tell us what the news stories are telling us. So they're not just memorizing, now they're processing the information and be able to compare, contrast, distinguish the differences between specific statements that they might be seeing. And then beyond analyzing, we'd want them to evaluate, make some statements around that was good or that was bad based on what they learned, and be able to essentially defend or give justification for why they arrived at their decision. And we feel that once they know all of those things and they get to the point where they're able to distinguish kind of right from wrong and be able to analyze things, then they're ready to create. They're ready to really like learn things and develop their own ideas and design things from the ground up and become original authors of ideas. That's what we expect them to do. On the other hand, just people living, there is another hierarchy of needs, and some of you might have seen this before. At the very bottom, you see that people first need things like most basic things like food and water, shelter. They need to be able to sleep, have enough sleep to be healthy. Beyond having those most basic things, they need to feel safety and security, hopefully also stability, and hopefully they feel freedom from fear. In order for them to move on to the next thing, those are things that they need, in addition to just the most basic food and water kind of needs. Beyond, after they feel safe and secure, they want to feel love and they want to belong. And what this means is they need to be able to build relationships and connections to other people. And once they have the skills to be able to do that, we want them to build self-esteem. We want them to be able to be confident in themselves, in the things that they stand for. And we want them to have self-respect, and we want them to respect other people. And then once they have all of that, they can self-actualize. They're going to be able to do so many more things. And that really, you can take a look at that self-actualization as the beginning of the previous slide. Once they have those things, they can learn and feel like they're in a good place, in a comfortable place to learn. So when we put the two hierarchies together, the message that we want you to get from this slide is Maslow's hierarchy, the needs on the left, the most basic, food in their belly, having enough sleep, having shelter over their head, feeling safe where they are, feeling like they belong, feeling like they know who they are and they respect who they are. They need those things before they can do the things on the left, on the right, I'm sorry. So in order for us to expect them to walk into the classroom ready to learn, we, as the people around them before they show up in that classroom, need to provide them with the things that are on the left-hand side. What happens when a child, kindergartner, doesn't get enough sleep because they are driving from one house to the next, or they are unhoused. And so they might be sleeping in a car. And so they're cold at night, so they're not getting very good sleep, and they might not get breakfast in the morning. What happens when they show up to class? They will be hungry. They will not have had enough sleep. And for any of you who have had times when you haven't had enough sleep, you might be a tiny little bit short on patience. You might be a little irritable, and you might react differently to what is presented in front of you than if you had had enough rest and you have food in your belly. This is why, for those of you who are aware of what happens in the schools, many teachers spend their own dollars to be able to bring food into their classroom so that children who come in obviously hungry or obviously not having eaten breakfast could have something to eat so that hopefully they can be ready to learn. So something to keep in mind is teachers know if a child is hungry, a child is going to have a very hard time focusing. A child is going to have a very hard time learning that day. So teachers are trying to do their best to be able to get our children to a place where they are ready to learn. The same thing if a child is not feeling safe at school, if there is one parent who shouldn't have access to them, who might be showing up to school to pick them up against the will of another parent, that's going to create a certain amount of stress in that child, and that child might not be focused in the classroom. If the child does not feel like they belong in that school, or people are making them feel like they're different and they're not welcome, they might be less focused on learning. They might be more focused on what they have done wrong to be made to feel like they don't belong. So these are all things that are very important to our children in order for us to expect that or to hope that they will show up into a classroom ready to learn. All right, some data that I'm going to share with you from the California Healthy Kids Survey. Every 2 years in your child's school, hopefully, the school is going to administer the California Healthy Kids Survey. This survey asks your children a whole lot of questions related to what their school environment is like, what learning is like, and some of their attitudes and behaviors. So I'll share some of this data with you. This data you will see in red is for your district, Belmont-Redwood Shores School District, and most recent data is from 2023-24. And these results here you will see only for fifth grade, because schools and parents in those schools don't want children younger than fifth graders to be surveyed. Survey is quite lengthy. It asks a lot of questions that parents feel perhaps might not be appropriate for children younger than fifth grade. So you only see fifth grade here. And even though seventh graders tend to be part of your school districts, I don't have data for seventh graders, and it could mean that your school district did not survey seventh graders. Seventh graders tend to be in different schools than elementary, like K-5 in many school districts. So that might be the reason. But I don't have data for seventh graders to share today. Hopefully for the next round of surveys, which would have happened in 2025 in this year, we will have data for seventh graders. But what you will see here related to mental health for fifth graders is that 11% of fifth graders feel that they are reporting that they are sad frequently. This is a simple question of, in the last 30 days, how often did you feel sad? None of the time, some of the time, so that kind of range. So they're feeling sad at least some of the time, 11%. The good news is you see that the wellness scale is pretty good. These are children who reported feeling happy or well. 79% of them reported that. Question that we would challenge you to think about is what happened to the other 21% who do not feel well or happy. Related to substance use, you will see that there is a 21% lifetime alcohol and other drug use rate. What does that mean, lifetime? At least once in their life, they picked up an alcohol or any other drug and consumed 21% of them. That's roughly 1 in 5. In fifth grade, obviously, you know this. They don't have access. They don't have legal access to any of these substances. They should not be getting them from stores. They should not be getting them from home. They should not be getting it from friends. But somehow 1 in 5 fifth graders reported having used a substance sometime in their life. You can see the cigarette use rate there in their lifetime, pretty low. Marijuana use rate, pretty low. Vaping, pretty low, although young people will tell you it's higher than what it looks like here. But regardless, it looks pretty low. So you wonder if it's not cigarette, it's not marijuana, and it's not vaping, what is it? It's alcohol. It's the number one substance that young people are consuming. What else do we know about fifth graders? This is related to school safety and cyberbullying. You can see the percentage there, about 1 in 4 of children in the district that have been hit or pushed. About 40% have been called bad names or have been targeted by mean jokes about them. 1 in 5 report having been cyberbullied, bullied online. The good news is 85% are reporting that they feel safe at home, and 87% are reporting that they feel safe on their way to school and from school. But over a third, over 1 in 3, reported that there have been mean rumors spread about them at school, and 6% reported seeing a weapon at their school. That number should be 0. That percentage should be 0. I'm just saying. Now, as the children get older and they enter the Sequoia Union High School District, this would be for 9th grade onwards. Some of these numbers stay the same and some of these numbers change quite dramatically sometimes. I'm not going to go through all of the numbers because it's a whole lot of data. I'm going to point out the things that I think are concerning or should be concerning. If you take a look at caring adult relationships, somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of young people are saying that they have caring adult relationships. We should ask ourselves the other 1/4 or 1/3 who don't have caring adult relationships. They also need caring adult relationships. Another concerning piece of data is current absenteeism. And you see that 16% of 9th and 11th graders are reported having been absent more than 3 times in the last 30 days, and more than a third of non-traditional school students report having problems with being absent from school. A non-traditional school is either a continuation school, a community school, and other names that we give schools where the students are not in your traditional expected school setting. There are many reasons why a student might not be in a traditional school setting. It could be that they just don't function very well in a traditional school setting. One reason or another, they might not have the units to graduate with their peers, and so they might get put into the setting. Or some students who get into behavioral problems at school might also be put into one of these non-traditional school settings. But their absenteeism rates are higher than other students. What I wanted you to see here is one of the measures for how well a student's going to do, especially at the elementary school level, is the involvement of parents in their child's education. So that very bottom set of bars that you see there in 9th grade, they reported that 52% of them reported that their parents are involved in schools. And you see that non-traditional school students have about 2/3 of them that are saying that. In some ways, parents are a lot more involved with the students' academic placement than in a traditional school. So something to keep in mind is if for the number of students whose parents are not engaged in their education, it ends up being something that might be less good than we want. The more involved the parent is, the better a student does in general. The meaningful participation question, in case you're curious, is the percentage of students who feel that they have a role in their own education, that they have a say in how they are learning and what they are learning at school. And that tends to be pretty low. throughout. School connectedness is one of the measures that we are interested in as a health department. Some of you may know that the Surgeon General of the United States had declared isolation as a public health issue, and how that translates to children, school-age children, is sometimes school connectedness. As I mentioned earlier, if a student feels connected to their school, they are more likely to go to school. They are more likely to have friends at school. They're more likely to try hard to do well at school. And they do, in fact, tend to do better academically if they feel connected than those students who don't feel connected. And if you take a look at that, less than 2/3 of our ninth graders feel connected to their school. A little over 2/3 of 11th graders feel connected to their schools. And only about half of non-traditional school students feel connected to their school. The next data point there about students reporting that school is really boring. We should worry when those many students are reporting that school is really boring, because as you can imagine, when something is really boring for you, it's very difficult to focus yourself and try really hard on whatever that topic is, just because it is just not catching your attention. It is not catching your interest. So there are things that we need to be doing differently so that children don't report being bored at school. More data that you might be interested in: the percentage of students who report having been harassed at school, students who have been in a physical fight at school, and again, the cyberbullying measure. Here's the perceived safety that students reported at school by grade. I think that the schools are doing pretty well. High rates of feeling of perceiving safety at school. We should worry about the percentage of students who don't feel safe at school, because if they don't feel, if you don't feel safe at school, it's harder to convince yourself to go to school. It's harder for other people to convince you to go to school. And I don't know if I left it in this deck or not, but one of the ways sometimes that students are able to exhibit that they don't feel safe at school is they have a physical malady, a headache, a stomach ache, feeling dizzy. That, you know, the kind of the mental challenges end up having physical manifestation if it's not addressed, and it becomes bad enough. Also, you see there the percentage of students who report having been verbally harassed at school, and again, the percentage of students who report seeing weapons at school. Again, at the high school level, current alcohol and other drug use, you see there, it tends to go up as the students get older. And that just says that they're starting, in our minds, they're starting young, and we're not addressing it adequately. So the rates keep going up as they get older. And you could see that students in non-traditional school settings have the highest rate of alcohol and other drug use. You see the current alcohol use, and you see the current binge drinking. Now, just a reminder that alcohol is not legally supposed to be accessible to these students. So if 2% of our ninth graders and 4% of our 11th graders and 6% of our non-traditional school students are binge drinking, where are they getting those drinks? Binge drinking is when you drink more than 5 drinks, more than 5 servings of alcohol in the same setting, same event, within probably a 2-hour period. You'll see here that tobacco use rates, they had gone down significantly in San Mateo County until vapes came in, and then they went there. They were starting to trend back up. You see the normal tobacco use, which tends to be cigarettes. Then there's vaping of tobacco, and then students have figured out, not just students, youth, even if they're not students, have figured out how to use vaping products to be able to use other substances. And here is another, what I would consider alarming piece of information: the percentage of young people who have gotten very drunk or high 7 or more times in their lifetime. And the young people are telling us these numbers are not representing enough of what is happening out there, but we are taking them by whatever they put in that survey. So, being very drunk or high 7 or more times in their life, that means that these folks are going to have an issue unless something gets done to help them understand that being very drunk or very high is probably not going to be healthy for them as they grow up. Especially one of the important pieces of information that we share, especially with parents, is that a young person's brain continues to develop until they are 25 years old. So any damage that you do to your brain before you are 25 could have lifelong implications for you. So for some people who use substances a lot as they are growing up before they are 25, their brains are altered so much that they could never develop to the point that everybody else develops. They somehow they stay at a much younger kind of mental age than everybody else. So this is something that would be of great concern to us, to know that young people are getting very drunk or high many times. Another data point that we take a look at is loneliness, percentage of young people who have felt lonely. And you see that close to 30% of the high school students in the district are reporting feeling lonely. And, this includes even feeling lonely when they're in the middle of many people. They could be at school and not feeling like there are people with them. Percentage of young people who have received mental health services. The percentage is pretty close also to the percentage of young people who said they sought mental health services in the last year. What else? Percentage of young people who self-harm. That definition is, or that question was specific to how many times in the last 12 months did you do something to purposefully hurt yourself, such as cutting, scratching, or burning yourself? The stress associated with health symptoms, I mentioned this earlier, but the question that was specifically asked of them was, in the last 2 weeks, how much were you bothered by the following physical conditions? Stomach aches, headaches, pains in your lower back, feeling faint or dizzy, heart beating too fast even if you are not exercising. And they responded with a lot or a whole lot. And then the trouble sleeping question, they were asked, this is like a question about their daily sleep. In the past 30 days, I had trouble going to sleep, woke up often, or had trouble getting back to sleep. And they responded with almost every day. And that number should concern us, because young people who don't have good sleep habits become young adults who don't have good sleep habits, and they become adults who don't have good sleep habits. So these are things that we should find a way to address. Now it doesn't want to move. I offended it by saying that, it didn't get enough sleep. Here we go. So the slide around why do young people use drugs? I'll just go through all of them here. And you will see that many of these were some of the slides that we talked about earlier. Boredom, peers who pressure them to use, depression, anxiety, stress, trauma are all reasons why young people might be using substances. And for many of these things, there is a need that a young person needs, whether it's connection with other people, or for people who are having pain, they just need some amount of relief. And they're using drugs to medicate. They're using alcohol or cannabis or tobacco to self-medicate from these things that they are feeling. So our job as adults would be to find ways to address these challenges in a more productive, in a healthier way, so that the outcomes are not as negative as if young people used drugs and continued to use drugs. Here are the substances that are most used by young people. Some of these are very familiar to you. The first four items there are items that can easily be accessed in a local store. Over the counter, OTC stands for over the counter cough medicine, because many of those have alcohol. Next time that you go to the store to get medicine for yourself or your children, take a look at the ingredients that are in that medicine. And for many of them, especially cough syrup, but others also actually will include alcohol. So. And just as a reminder, what can we do about this as the adults who are part of children's lives? Here are the things that children need before they go to school so that they can be ready to learn. These are things that primarily we have one way or the other assigned to parental figures or adults in their lives. And if young people don't have these things in their lives, they're going to fill those gaps in their lives, those empty spaces in their bodies or in their minds with things that might help them feel okay about not having self-esteem or not feeling like they are loved or they belong or not feeling safe. People will medicate so that they can, at least for a moment or a few moments, feel safe. Other things that you can do to help if you find out that your young person is in trouble. Keep in mind that parents are the number one teachers of young people. They are with us the longest, and they are with us the most often. As much time as they spend with their teachers at school, they have spent many, many more years with us before they even showed up to school. What you teach them consciously or unconsciously will serve as foundation for all their decisions, good or bad. For example, if we tell them that cigarettes are bad for them, but we smoke, they're thinking either we are lying to them and cigarettes are not that bad, or we think adults are the ones who can use cigarettes, not them. And what happens when a young person thinks that only adults can use a substance? They're going to be like, oh, that's what I want. They're really going to want it. So until young people are able to understand and analyze information in the world around them enough to make their own decisions, they rely on the people, either their parental figures or the people who have served as their parental figures, to guide them through those decisions. And really, in many ways, it is an honor to have that role in a child's life, to have them follow what it is that you do, because you have a great opportunity to be able to shape who they are. There comes a time in their life when their peers start to have more influence on them than we do. This starts to happen around adolescence. Sometimes it happens in early adolescence, but most times it's in middle adolescence. By the time they get to, let's say, 15 or 16 years old, their peers have more influence over them than their parental figures do. So while you have them prior to that time, do the best that you can to have that connection with them so that they follow how you want them to behave, and they follow the behaviors, the healthy behaviors that you are exhibiting to them. Let me see if I can get through these. And let's see, if you, another example is if you tell your young person to be nice to other people, not to be mean to people, and then they hear you yelling and swearing at other people while you are driving, they're not getting the role modeling that they need. I know I have been guilty of like yelling when I shouldn't. I think we probably all have, but they are observing us and they have many, many hours to observe us. And so when we mess up, let's admit that we messed up and we should be trying harder, and then show them that we are trying to be better and to be better role models, because that's what they need to understand from us, what's okay and what's not okay. Another example of this related to alcohol is if you tell them not to drink, but they see you wind down at the end of a very long day and you've had a rough time at work, and you walk into the house and you're like, oh, I really need that glass of wine. The message that you are giving them is that when life is going really, really badly, that substance is going to help them feel better. And if they see that that is how you navigate difficult situations or difficult days or difficult relationships, they're going to think that's a solution to their days and their relationships also. So what I have here on screen are the things that you can do to help your young person learn the values that you want them to have. Share with them what your values are. Let them know that you would like for them to have the same values. And while you are still influential, your values will make a big difference to them. Once you become less influential, your values become less important to them. So let's try to inculcate them with those values while they are still young. It's work really hard to understand where they're coming from. Sometimes young people don't need you to solve their problems. They need you to hear what they're going through, because it could be that there's nobody listening. They need somebody to listen to what they're going through. And sometimes just listening and just being present is enough. And then some challenging things for us adults. We want to give them space, but we also need to be there for them. So when they are adolescents and they're trying to establish who they are and they're rebelling and they're pushing against the boundaries that you are giving them, that is normal. That is normal adolescence. It is part of adolescent development to be testing the boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay. But if you allow them to get away with too much, like you tell them curfew's at 10 o'clock or curfew's at 9 or whatever time it is, and then they come in an hour later and nothing happens. The next time they're going to come in another hour later. If nothing happens, they're going to keep coming in later because they're trying to figure out where their edges are, where you're not okay with what they're doing. So set your rules and hold people accountable to your rules. But also keep in mind that they need space. If you are the kind of parent who is over them all the time, telling them everything to do, you might be doing more harm than good in your relationship as well as your child, because they also need to learn how to make decisions for themselves, come up with a plan of what they want to do and make choices. And if we don't give them the space to be able to make mistakes, make the wrong plans or make the wrong choices, if we never allow them to make a mistake while they are under our roof, when they are not under a roof and they make mistakes, there is no safety net for them. And that could be pretty brutal for a young person. So give them space give them a safe space to fail, where you will be there to catch them and help them hopefully not do that again. They might need your opinion on what options they potentially might have to solve a problem, but don't fix the problem for them. If you fix the problem for them, they never learn to fix the problem for themselves. They're always going to need somebody to rely on to fix the problems for them. And that's not a resilient child. You want them to be able to figure out that there is a problem, figure out what options they have, maybe help them, decide what potential solution they want to try. Watch them try that, see what results, talk it through them and see if that didn't work out, maybe what other option they might want to explore. So help them grow, but give them space to be able to do that growing. And probably most important, if you do nothing else, be present for your child. Just being present is really, really important for them. One of the things, some of us have to work 2 jobs. Some of us have to work 3 jobs. Some of us have to be away sometimes from our children. Really important that when you have the time and the opportunity that you be present for them. Think about what they'll remember when they're 30 years old. What will they tell their significant other at that time about your involvement in their life? Will they say, you know what? My mom was always in my classroom when I was in elementary school. It was really annoying, but she was there. She was there in middle school. She was there in high school. She was just there. But they might also say, I grew up on my own. My parent was never there. And frozen dinners were the way that I went through my adolescence. It's fascinating what adolescents and young adults and older adults will remember about their childhood. You might have been present 50% of the time or 80% of the time, and somehow they remember the 20% when you weren't present. So, I think being present is important because they do talk about it as they get older. They will remember the times that you were there and the times when you were not there. Some of us think that if we just knew enough about drugs, we can keep our child from being involved with drugs and getting into trouble. The bad news is it's almost impossible to be able to tell what a good drug looks like versus what a bad drug looks like. On screen, you see some drugs that look like each other and some that are just by themselves. And if you were to be asked, to me, they all look the same. They all look like prescription medication. Only that medicine on the upper left with the arrow is a real medication. The rest of these are fake. So it's hard to be able to tell what is fake and what is real. The only way you know a medicine is real is you got a prescription from your doctor and you filled that medication at your pharmacy. If you are getting that medication from a friend, if you are getting that medication from social media, if you're getting that medication from a guy somebody else knows down the street, you don't know what is in that medication. And the data that we have now is that medicines or drugs that are bought off the internet or off of the street are somewhere between 60 and 70% laced with fentanyl. What is fentanyl? It can be like a powder. It is an opioid. It manages pain. It actually has medical use. It is used in hospitals for people who are experiencing significant amount of pain. It is extremely strong and highly addictive. The only way it is safe to use is under the care of a medical provider, probably an anesthesiologist. It's 100% stronger than morphine, which we worried about for many years. It's 50 times stronger than heroin, which we worry about all the time. You can see on the left-hand side there about how much heroin a person would have to take to consume in order for that heroin to be deadly. And you can see on the right-hand side how much fentanyl they have to take in order for fentanyl to be deadly. And it's a very small amount. On the lower picture there, the penny, you could see that little powder on the right-hand side of the penny. That's how much fentanyl a person takes that could kill them. And it's not a lot at all. When you have a pill, like the previous slide that I showed you, how much of that pill is fentanyl and how much is the medication? You're not able to tell because pills that are made by people kind of illegally are not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. There is no controlling how much of the different ingredients are in that drug. You actually, even if it was 100% no fentanyl at all, you actually don't know how much of the effective medicine that you think you're getting is in that pill because it is not regulated. And since we have time, I am going to show you. Usually when we do these presentations in person, I will bring Narcan or naloxone to the presentation. This is what the box looks like. We are making these available throughout San Mateo County. They are free. They are in train stations. They are in hopefully any clinic that you might have gone to. We are trying to talk libraries and more like private clinics to have naloxone vending machines or naloxone stands so that they can be available. Naloxone is used if you suspect that there is an opioid overdose. There are many opioid drugs that we didn't cover tonight, but there are many opioid drugs, fentanyl being one of them. And if somebody is overdosing on an opioid drug, naloxone is something that is effective in saving them. It looks like this. It looks a little bit like to me, it's very related to an inhaler if you have a child with asthma. How you would hold it is you would put the nozzle in between two fingers. Your thumb would be down here where the plunger is. You would put this cone, not sure what it's called, tube, into the nose of the person who has overdosed. and until the nose touches the top of your fingers, and then you will just push that plunger so that the medicine goes up the person's nostrils. You would wait, and within probably a minute or two, that person's going to start to wake up and move around. They might even get into a fight with you, unfortunately, because you're making their body go through withdrawal. Whatever the opioid thing was that they took in, naloxone is counteracting, and so now they're unhappy because they want their opioid. If they don't wake up after a minute or two, there are two of these doses in the box. You would just take the second dose out. You would put it in the other nostril, and then you would send that medicine. You would just press that plunger so that the medicine goes up the person's nostril. And that should, for the most part, most people wake up after one or two. The highest that we have heard has taken 8 doses before they woke up. And that's a little frightening because most of us don't carry 4 of these boxes in our purses or in our backpacks. So that is me, my contact information. Thank you for having me. If you or someone you know might need assistance, whether they're using substances and need help or might have mental health challenges, that phone number on the right-hand side is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you don't have time to write that all down or it's hard to memorize, this QR code should help you connect. If you scan that QR code with your phone, and please save it, that site, when you need it, it will get you to our access call center. They will call you, they will ask you what challenges you might be facing, and they will figure out the best way to be able to place you in appropriate mental health or substance use services in San Mateo County. And that is it. I will stop sharing so that I can see folks if they are there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We don't have any questions yet, but there is a question and answer at the bottom of the screen if anybody has any questions.
Are folks able to just get off of mute and ask a question, or do they have to put it in the Q&A?
I'm not sure.
They would have to put it in the Q&A, but if someone wanted to ask a individual question, we could promote them to a presenter. They can just let us know.
Okay. That was a lot of information. So somebody said, thank you for the presentation. Oh, here's a question. How can a parent tell if their kid is using a substance?
There are many, depending on the substance, they will have different symptoms. If you look at the pupils of their eyes, it could be pinpoint or it could be very large. Either of those is a hint to you that perhaps you need to look further into if your child might be using. Sometimes they get very agitated, or sometimes they're not wanting to engage at all. You probably know your child a lot better than anybody else. If your child's personality changes, that is a sign that perhaps you want to look into what might be happening with them. In my experience, the advice that we give parents is the people that your child hangs out with will determine in many ways your child's outcome. So if there's a way that you can help your child make friends with people who you want them to grow up with, that is one way that you can influence them. But that personality change is the most likely and the fastest way and most obvious way that you know your child might be struggling with something. Sometimes they will change the way that they dress altogether. Sometimes they will change the way that they look. Many times their friends will change, because if they've been hanging out with the kids that you wanted them to hang out with, and all of a sudden one day those are not their friends anymore, they have a whole group of other friends, that's something for you to look into. One of the things that I've always tried to do was I wanted to know who my children were hanging out with. I wanted to know who their friends were. So my involvement with the PTA meant I was in the classroom. I knew every child and which parent they belong with. And my children grew up and went to the same middle school, the same high school as, the children that they went through kindergarten with. So families were kind of protective of each other. If I saw one of the kids walking down the street being disrespectful or being unsafe, I would just stick my head out the window and say, I'm going to call your mother. And the mother will hear about it later on, and then they'll have a conversation. So the children know that it's not just their parents looking out for them. But yes, when your the people that they hang out with change to people who you might have concerns about, you might want to think about having conversations with your children or having conversations with your children's doctor about what might be happening, what you're concerned about. The doctor sees them once or twice a year. You see them every day. If you tell their medical doctor that you're concerned about, and then you list the things, that is something that sometimes when the doctor is going to have a private conversation with your child, that the doctor might bring up to your child so that they can get the connection to the help they need.
Let's see.
Also, another idea is when your child's grades tank. If you've got a child who's getting straight A's and B's and all of a sudden they come home with like straight D's or something like that, something has changed.
Did Robert want to ask a question? Let's see.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I can set him to for allowed to talk.
Okay. Okay, I have a question while we wait for that. What are your thoughts on demystifying alcohol by allowing a small amount of wine at dinner on special occasions? Does that also affect the numbers possibly?
I think so. There are ways that children might have access to alcohol, but I don't think that they would answer that they have consumed in their lifetime if they got that sip at dinner or, for some religious groups, wine is part of. I don't know that they give children wine, but they might be giving them very watered down wine. What are my thoughts on that? Wine for a young child's palate is pretty disgusting. It takes some getting used to, and maybe over time somebody will think it is delicious. But generally, my for children, it tastes a lot like vinegar. And who wants to drink that? However, there are children who are given a little sip of wine and they're like, ooh, I really like that. And they find ways to be able to access it, maybe when you're not so generous, maybe when you are not looking. So I think it's really important for them to understand this whole brain development thing. Their brain is developing until they're 25. And there are people who genetically are more likely to become addicted than other people. This is some percentage, somewhere between 15 and 20% of people who all they need to do is take that one hit or take that one drink and they're like, I really like that. And they go seeking that and they are more likely to become addicted. The vast majority of us can drink these things maybe socially and be fine. We just don't know if we are one of that small percentage of people who are more likely to be addicted. And once you're addicted, you start to lose control over your own decisions because getting that substance and consuming that substance becomes the most important thing to you. You will spend food money, you will spend rent money, you will spend money that your children should be getting rather than you would spend that rather than feeding your family or housing your family. You will spend that money on that substance. That's how you know that substance might have gotten you and now you're addicted.
Good question. Um, that's
If there aren't any other questions, I mentioned to Penny earlier that tonight was a little bit of an introductory, or I have so much more data and so many more ideas that dig deeper into the ideas about how parents can help their children. If you and your school or your PTA are interested in having us come and talk more in detail about these things, how do we create an environment where children feel loved, or an environment where they feel safe? We can dig deeper into any of those topics that you might be interested in.
I have one more question. It
Mhm.
says, do you recommend secret testing your child for drugs?
I would have to say no. I think the really important thing is to build trust with your child, from when they are young. If your child is clearly having problems, and you might be desperate to know what's going on, maybe you're going to do that. But think 10 years from now, 20 years from now, your child is whatever, 30 years old, and you're having conversation and it comes out that you tested them when they were little. It really breaks the trust between a parent and a child when a parent does something so, the child would consider it invasive. The child would consider it a violation of their privacy. So it's a high risk that you are taking. Of course, if you are desperate, you have to do something to figure out if something is happening with your child. I would take the approach of having the conversation with their doctor, with their medical provider, if you can do that. Having another trusted adult in their life, maybe broach that question with them rather than you asking them, because this parent-child dynamic, I can tell you so much, all of the years of their interaction with you come into that one question that you bring to that table. It isn't just that question innocently being asked by you. It is all of those other interactions they had with you. So if you had another adult they trust, have that conversation and ask that question of them about what might be happening with them, and what they might be struggling with and what they might need help with. I would recommend taking those approaches first before you take this pretty drastic step of testing them. In some families that have identified their young person as struggling with substances, in order for that person to have privileges in the household, there are random drug tests. The young person never knows when what the parent is going to be testing them, because this is how you build trust. When you say you're not going to use the substance, you are not using the substance, and every so often we will just randomly test you. So there are some families who do that. And it's actually, in some ways, it could be a blessing for the young person, because when their peer tells them, hey, have a drink, I'm having a drink, you drink with me, or I'm doing this, let's go join, your young person can say, I can't, man, my parents are testing me. There's no way I'm going to get into so much trouble. Or, they can use the coach to say, the coach will not let me play if I test positive, so I better stay away. So, these are tools that you can think about, but for some of them, they carry kind of a secondary risk that you want to be careful. And that trust between a child and a parent is so precious, but it can also be so fragile. And once it's broken, it takes so much to build it back up. I mean, how do you repair a broken glass? You can glue it together, but you can still see the cracks. So if you can do this in a way that doesn't break that glass, that would be my recommendation, until you're at a place where you're desperate and you need to know because you think your young person might be in trouble. I did talk to a parent at Carmont whose child got a B in calculus. All other grades are B's, and really, really worried. Oh, all other grades are A's except for this one B. And he's really, really worried that this child is falling apart. And I'm like, your child's doing pretty well, actually, in relationship to like other things. So, what might seem drastically difficult in a challenge for us might actually not be. So having other people help you see this from a more objective perspective, might be advisable. This is why I like being in PTAs, because there are other parents there and say, hey, I'm having this challenge with my child. Have you come across this? Do you have any ideas about what resources might be available to me? Use the parents that are the parents of the friends of your children, if you're in the PTA, I think that asking for help is very hard for many of us, but sometimes it's just the thing you need to be able to get you past a difficult situation.
So if you suspect your student is having an issue with, I don't know, they're high or something, and what do you recommend to do at that point?
Um,
Besides testing secretly, would you?
I would ask the child what is happening with them. Another approach might be let them know that you're worried. You're worried that maybe they are using substances. In some ways, putting it right on the table for them to deny or admit becomes a relief for them because they probably have hidden it from you and they're probably all stressed out that at some point you're gonna find out and they're gonna be in so much trouble. So you're letting them know that you're worried because you notice these changes in them might just be what they need to be able to let you know I am struggling with some things and here is how I am dealing with these stressors in my life. Because if they don't know a way to deal with a healthy way to deal with the stresses in their lives, this is when substances come in because a friend will say, hey, I have a thing to help you calm down. And when they become adolescents, the advice of their friends become really important. But you're putting yourself in the middle and letting them know I have other ideas. Can we work together to see if we might be able to help you with your stresses without resorting to substances? Because if you get addicted, it becomes very, very difficult to get yourself out of an addiction. And so many people who are addicted don't even realize that they are addicted until it's too late. So, and once the drug takes over your ability to make decisions, it becomes difficult for everybody around you to be able to help you. So the sooner you let your child know that you're worried and that you would like to understand what's happening with them and you'd like to help, I think that would be a good first step because sometimes something as simple, I don't want to say bullying is simple, but bullying is something that we can do something about. But if a child internalizes all of that and thinks that they're being bullied because they're not worthy, then they start to add other burdens on themselves that they don't need to. And just having somebody to talk to could certainly help them find a different path, a healthier path.
There you go. Thank you so much. I think those are all the answers. And I think that was a great introduction to getting some conversations going with our students. Thank you, Edith. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was I had a good time talking to folks. I can talk all night about mental health and drug use. So please invite me back.
Yes. Okay. Thank you,
Have a
everybody.
good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.